There is a surge in violence this week alone. Kraaifontein, the scene of devastating incidents, 9 people being killed. In the face of this crisis, we've seen a heightened response from authorities. There was a visit from the acting police minister. And let's get more from JP Smith, the City of Cape Town's mayoral committee member for safety and security, to discuss the latest happenings on the ground, not only in Kraaifontein but other areas. And what is the city's plan to combat the violence with the deployment of 700 new Metro police officers and the outcomes of the police ministry's recent visit to the city? JP, good morning. Thank you for being with us. It's really hard to control one's emotions when you talk to the pastors, when you talk to the community workers. And we were in conversation with them this morning, people like Abby Isaacs, the chair of the Cape Flats Safety Forum, whom you probably know very well. But other community members are saying, we are graveyard workers. We are only collecting bodies. People are trapped in their homes. Then you have the acting police minister admitting that there is still no proper plan to deal with gangsterism. The gangsters seem to have won here, JP.
No, I wouldn't say that. Sadly, the statistics now this year are much the same as they are last year. There is just a much increased media focus on this. But if you tell that, as you correctly point out, to any of the victims or their families, they are horrified. The fact that these kind of statistics are recurrent are shocking and monstrous in itself. And the fact that as national government, the National Police Service, whose primary constitutional role, crime fighting, and particularly serious and violent crime, is problematic. So at the moment, in the flare-up around gang violence, the city is daily making significant resource allocation. 230 of our officers support SAPs now in these 11 gang stations every day, on top of the 1,300 LEAP members. And last week, we added another 700 Metro Police officers, or earlier this week, actually 810 Metro Police officers across the city. The problem is that whilst we are adding a cup of water, national government has scooped out a bucket, because the overall SAPS numbers have atrophied significantly in the last few years. And the bits that the city adds is not compensating for what we've lost. And the big problem is not visible policing, because you're not dealing here with random crime. You're dealing with organized crime, and you're not going to win organized crime with random driving up and down the road. For organized crime, you need organized interventions, effective investigations, coordinated, prosecutorially driven, that target the gang bosses and make sure that that the asset is seized, that they're prosecuted, that the shooters are prosecuted, that the income streams of these gangs are dismantled, not as we have to read from an NGO who have done their own investigation and found that there's a pipeline of guns from Namibia, from the police and the military, fueling this constant warfare. So this is why we are constantly shouting for devolution. It's not just a political narrative. We are desperate. We cannot take as the city 2,369 guns off the street in 4.5 years and see only 5% of those cases lead to conviction. We have to see all of them, or a large percentage of them, lead to conviction. Otherwise, you will be telling these stories of shooters recurrently doing the same thing.
Decades of imbizos, JP, task teams, parliamentary debates have failed to curb the gang violence. As you're sharing with us, it sounds as if your hands are tied and your back's against the wall. This is not something you can manage on your own. We've had endless interviews with you, other members of the teams, around the devolution of the police service, and now we have the allocation of more officers. But the reality is that we're dealing with an issue that is systemic in its nature, and that is also changing when we think about what happens inside prison and the control that gang bosses inside prison are having on the streets of the city. We also have had cooperation agreements with the SAPS. So, in other words, we've thrown a number of things at this problem, but families are burying their children. And we say increasing numbers. You're saying the stats mimic pretty much what's happened before. What is the urgent thing that needs to happen in this moment? There are calls for a national disaster, a state of emergency to be declared, for SANDF to be on the ground. Where are we with those interventions?
Those are in the hands of the national minister and the national state president, declaring the state of disaster or deploying the military. Neither of them are viable or meaningful long-term interventions. But at this stage, I will not stand between any community and their pleas for peace. You cannot say to a community, well, that's not the right intervention to solve the problem. You need to fix the police. All they want to know is that the violence must stop. And on that, I support them fully. The national government must do what it must do at this stage to stabilize the environment. And against that stabilized background, they must fix the broken criminal justice system. It's not mysteries. These are not mysterious problems. These are not weird problems that nobody understands the solutions of. There are many criminologists and many people who are every day saying the same thing over and over, as the city has consistently said it for more than a decade now. There are far too few detectives. We're sitting with a little bit more than a third of the detectives we should have. There are way too few resources. There are huge backlogs in things like ballistics and other forensics. And you're not getting the conviction rate. So your offenders are getting to offend over and over. Let's look at the situation with the horrible killing of the baby in Bonteheuwel. 2 men were involved in that murder, or in that case. One of those men has in 2016 and 2019 been arrested for an illegal firearm case. Both those cases collapsed. That man is running on the street doing the same thing he did before, whereas the state has had 2 chances to put him away. The same with the gangster that was released that caused a spate of killings in the south of the city, was released after what journalists and others call a botched prosecution of a murder he was allegedly involved in, and 13 murders immediately resulting from his release. So I'm afraid it's not a mysterious problem. We understand what the problem is at, but it is not in the hands of local government or provincial government to fix. We had a very productive meeting with the national minister last night. He is very open-minded. We are talking to him about how we can assist and how we can do targeted interventions at these hotspots. We already are at every day now, giving significant resources to try and help them. And I think he has an open mind about what he can do and what is possible.
And we'll come back to specifics around that, JP. But again, the community is looking, they're looking for help. Essentially is what they have been looking for a long time. I said in the beginning, people are literally trapped in their homes. There are, no-go hours in communities where they simply can't go out. And even in the hours that they do go out, attacks are happening in broad daylight. What you've been reiterating to us in this interview and over time is you have done everything that you can. You are tapped out. This is an issue that needs decisive leadership from a higher national government level. It needs a decision-making and leadership from the president's office himself. I just want you to confirm that that's where the fingers should be pointing. And again, people say, it's not about a blame game, but in this instance where people are dying and families are burying their children, we need a place to place this.
Again, I think you're right in saying that it mustn't be about a blame game. We are in this together, provincial, local and national government. We have common crises. But there are a few things that are broken here. There are critical problems in the criminal justice system and the fact that you have around a 2 or 3% conviction rate for gang-related murders. And these are organized crime murders. These are not random examples of violence. These murders are related and they're tit-for-tat killings related to syndicates. So the organized crime component of it means effective crime intelligence, which the national minister and every criminologist in this country admits is all but completely dysfunctional at the moment, with factions fighting with each other nationally instead of getting a handle on the source of the guns, the source of the ammunition, and the nature of the syndicates. So there are things that need to be fixed. There aren't easy, some of them are not quick fixes, and that's the problem in terms of national government. There are things that the state president can do now to help stabilize the situation with substantial additional employments of police to these communities, to stabilize the situation, and the possibility of deploying the SANDF as peacekeepers. Neither of those are long-term solutions. In long-term, you have to bump up the number of detectives, do very targeted investigations. And if you can't do that, allow local government, because we've been asking for so long, and eventually that asking will go over to formal litigation. We will go to court and ask the court to pronounce that the state's refusal to let us do investigations, even on the arrests that we make, is just irrational, because we can't help if the state nationally is not able to solve the problem.
Tell me a bit more about that, JP. How advanced is that course of action?
So we have over the last year, and sorry, my phone is ringing in the background. We have, over the last years, been very busy and focused on increasing our capacity. We've had serious challenges with syndicates challenging and threatening these structures of the city, the procurement processes, and our workers on the street. We've had to develop capacity and skill to be able to respond to that, especially in the absence of effective investigations. So we've built investigative capacity, we've built information management skills, and those have helped tremendously. It helped SAPS when we had to combat the kidnapping for ransom cases, where we very effectively collaborated. And so we've demonstrated the ability. We've been engaging SAPS for over a decade on this, the national government. And so at some point, we must go in from intergovernmental relations, these constructive engagements, to litigation. So we'll see what SAPS does. I'm very encouraged by what I heard the minister say. He's clearly given this careful analysis, and he's thinking about these things carefully, and he has a strong handle on critical issues like the POCO Act. He understands that the Prevention of Organised Crime Act is not helping the police do what they need to do. There is a critical piece of legislation that needs urgent amendment and improvement, and he's got a handle on that. I'm encouraged to see. But if things do not move swiftly, at some point in the next 12 months, the city will need to go to court and try and formally get a court to pronounce on the matter of investigative and information management abilities for the city, so that we can get that 5% conviction rate for guns, which should be slam dunk cases. We can get those up to a decent percentage, closer to 60 or 80%, so that these shooters can be taken off the street for good.
Just a very quick one, because I must squeeze in another question before I let you go. Who will you be taking to court in that litigation?
So that will be the state nationally. Our fight is not necessarily with SAPS. It's the powers here are bestowed by the National Minister of Police. And again, I said I was so encouraged by the conversation yesterday that at the moment litigation is not what we're thinking. We're hoping that constructive engagement will get us to the kind of outcomes our communities need. And then there is a short-term thing that can be done to fix policing for the whole of South Africa. Only a few cities have metro police, but all municipalities have municipal peace officers, and their powers can be significantly expanded by the Minister of Justice with a stroke of a pen in terms of the Criminal Procedures Act, and that will empower all municipalities across South Africa to step up and do a lot more instantly.
There are 700 new Metro Police officers. Are they going to be integrated? In other words, the communities in Kraaifontein, those where they've been burying their children in the last week or two, are they going to be seeing a very different picture when they step outside their doors? Are they going to feel safer, JP?
700 officers spread over an entire city over 24 hours a day is not going to magically make crime go away. But with every operation we do, every criminal we arrest, every crime we stop, every fine we issue for a bylaw offence or otherwise brings us closer to the kind of city that our residents deserve. So they will make a difference. There are 5 of them going to each ward in the city, so we can spread our resources to touch every community. And remember, before this, we did a deployment of 1,300 officers, 1,300 officers to our 13 worst crime hotspots, to support SAPS in the fight against crime.
But aren't you diluting it? I mean, don't you do the places closer to Cape Town need these officers? Shouldn't they all just be concentrated in these areas that have had these historic problems?
That is why the 1,300 officers, much more than the 5 per ward, have already been deployed to these worst hotspots. And every day, our gang and drug task team, our K9 unit, the SWAT team we've just built, the reaction unit, the 230 officers that we've now also deployed are assisting SAPS in these hotspots. But keep in mind, the city has a core constitutional competency in terms of traffic and bylaw enforcement that we are horrifically neglecting. There are many, many casualties on our roads every day across this country. We have one of the worst casualty rates on our roads. There are many people losing their lives from that also.
All right.
That is also a crying shame. And there we have a core responsibility to act. Whereas the crime prevention role that is being neglected by the state nationally is one that we're stepping in and helping as much as we can. But not everything we have can go towards replicating the job that the South African police are meant to do.
All right.
As it is, daily, we are pouring in around 2/3 of our resources into that crime prevention role.